the Get Up and Shine Show, where your host Lillian Taylor brings you intimate and inspiring interviews from people who faced off with serious life struggles and prevailed. As our guests revisit with the moments, realizations, and tools that helped them break through, you might just walk away more empowered in your own life. It's that time. Get up and shine.
Hi, this is Lillian Taylor with Get Up and Shine.
Reaching out and connecting to a human that you can trust is like paramount. Because then you can start to figure out where to go from there and what's going to help you.
Physics, quantum field, theoretical framework, special relativity, physical models of subatomic particles, condensed matter physics, Lagrangian, did I say that right? Feynman diagrams, computational tools, relativistic perturbation theory. Okay, stop. What? No, actually, just really stop. But this may very well be the cure for racism. There may very well be emerging a field of medicine, doctors who specialize in quantum leaping our DNA to ascended levels? Huh. So here we are.
There you go.
So tell me your name.
I'm Krista Hovsapian.
Hovsapian, okay. And you have a father who is Armenian? Is it your father or your mother?
It's my father's lineage is Armenian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the Get Up and Shine show, and I just should probably tell you a little bit about the format, what we do.
Yeah.
We interview people who have been through trying circumstances and have found their way through them and ultimately have gotten up and shined brightly in what they want to do with their lives and their calling.
I love that.
One of the things that we've been asked to do is to help out some of the children who have been through violent times. As you know, there are a couple who have committed suicide, and the stress is just overwhelming. The press is always there. They never get a chance to kind of get over it.
Yeah.
I think that in terms of Armenian heritage, there has been a lingering distress and aftermath because of a war. But, I know so little about that, and most people don't. I know that I know the distress. I know the angst. I don't know the history. So can we start there? Can you tell us? Can you share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So just leading up to 1915, several massacres started happening. Historians are very clear on the fact that it was one of the first incidences of ethnic and racial cleansing in the 20th century, where many, many Turkish soldiers were going into Armenian neighborhoods, going into Armenia in an effort to exterminate the entire population.
Why?
The Armenians were sort of the first people in the Middle East to really embrace Christianity.
Oh.
And it's heartbreaking to see coverage of what's happening there today because it's so similar to the stories that we heard at that time and my own family's experiences. The borders are a little bit different, and we call the lands by different names and stuff, but they're still warring over the same issues.
About belief systems.
Yeah, which is just mind-blowing to me, especially being a Canadian, where people are so welcoming and so tolerant, and you can really be who you want to be and express your views. So I'm not surprised that my ancestors chose Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, but
so they actually had to migrate to Canada to get away from the ethnic cleansing?
Yeah, my great-grandfather was part of a group of intellectuals who understood what was happening, that they were in a very politically volatile situation leading up to the official start of the genocide.
There was an official start.
It's officially marked as 1915, right?
Okay.
It was sort of like this crazy thing that was coming and a few things were happening, and 1915 is when things really, really got bad.
And Turkey denies this?
Turkey denies it. Many, many countries officially recognize it. Many historians officially recognize it. Most United States do recognize it. The country on the whole doesn't, because there are certain states who won't use the term genocide. Obama is very near and dear to our community because he was the first American president to use the term genocide. First and only. It hasn't been used since then. France just held a beautiful commemorative event on the anniversary. It was our Remembrance Day last month. But My great-grandfather fled to Canada before the situation got just too heated. Mm-hmm. I believe he was in his 30s by the time 1915 came around. Mm-hmm. My great-grandmother was 8 at the time. She and her younger brother, who was 5, were marched out to the back of their house with their mother and forced to witness their father and brothers murdered in front of them.
Goodness.
And then they were taken on a death march through what is now the Syrian desert. And a lot of Armenian women at the time used to sew gold coins into the hem of their skirts, mm-hmm. knowing that if they passed on the death march and there were surviving family members, they could potentially take the coins out and either use them to bribe Turkish soldiers into giving them food or water, mm-hmm. or use them to connect with predominantly Greek allies at the time, mm-hmm. to get out of that area.
Okay.
So at 8 years old, my great-grandmother had the wherewithal, when her mother did pass, to plead with the Turkish soldiers to let she and her younger brother stay behind and bury their mother's body. And of course, the soldiers thought, their kids, they're in the desert, like, we're taking them either on a death march or to a concentration camp, like, fine, leave them behind. Mm-hmm. And she led her younger brother from, like, piles of dead bodies to piles of dead bodies until they found these Greek allies.
Okay.
They were separated on different rescue boats at that point in time. She was sent to France, where she lived in an orphanage for a little while and was eventually adopted and then sent as a bride at 16 to my great-grandfather, who was in his 30s. Which is, bittersweet. They were trying to rescue as many Armenian women as they could and preserve the culture.
Was he Armenian as well?
He was, yeah. There were several Armenian men, actually in Brantford, Ontario, which is where Wayne Gretzky was born.
Oh.
That's where they ended up. Mm-hmm. Many of them ended up, there would be 8 couples in the same house, and they would sleep in shifts. But
why?
There weren't enough bedrooms.
Oh, I see.
They would have to sleep in shifts. They would share the same wedding dress and veil. And they were trying to build a new life after losing or abandoning everything. Not speaking the language, not having any transferable skills. Mm-hmm.
Did she ever talk to you about this, or was this...
She didn't. No. It was... She was not a happy woman, understandably, and just didn't like to open up about any of it. Mm-hmm. But you grow up just bearing the weight of this ancestral trauma. And it's...
You're talking about you.
All of us.
Okay.
All of us, yeah. I mean, I don't think she ever recovered, but you're taught to harbor this anger towards a population mm-hmm. that I think any culture and many cultures have been through some sort of trauma. There's been some historical event. Many of us are taught to harbor anger towards the sort of quote-unquote perpetrators, or be skeptical when we're around them, mistrust them. And I got to a point in my personal journey where I realized that wasn't serving anyone, because it was like, even if the Turkish government doesn't recognize it, I have Turkish friends who do, and they're great people, and they had nothing to do with what went on. Holding on to that anger was really only causing self-harm.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is not an easy thing to kind of reconcile in our minds. We like to get caught in victimhood. It's very human. It's very easy to get stuck there. Mm-hmm. But I remember as a kid, sitting around the table at family events and hearing a lot about, there would be an expletive, the whatever Turks, and this and that. And
so how old were you when you came to the feeling that you needed to let go of harboring the resentment that you were taught to feel?
I was in my late 20s. I had an experience. I was studying anthropology in Berlin, and there's a massive Turkish population in Germany. Mm-hmm. And we were encouraged to go into a neighborhood that was Turkish and Kurdish and Afghani. And so as a Canadian, I wasn't expecting to feel anything, because I come from one of the most diverse cities in the world.
Right.
And I went to, it was like a still photographic based sort of photojournalistic look at the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I went and started photographing things, and I found myself completely paralyzed. I just couldn't function. There was all of this rage bubbling up, this fear. They have scientifically proven with Holocaust survivors, for the World War II Holocaust, that anxiety and that pain and that anger is passed on from generation to generation for a minimum of 3 generations, that we literally carry it in our DNA.
Yes.
So I felt all of this stuff coming up. I was feeling very, very triggered. And I went back and had a discussion with my classmates, who are all very, very thoughtful anthropologists. And I went, oh my God, you guys, how have I been, like, I'm being incredibly racist here. Like, this awareness just hit me that that's exactly what it is. And it's the last thing that we need more of in this world. And it's not beneficial to anyone. So I spent quite a bit of the day talking through the whole thing and trying to dismantle it with my classmates. It was a very, very diverse group of students, international.
I just think it's exceptional that they were open to, and you were open to having that discussion, to admitting it, and that they were receptive to helping you through it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, I think in general, like, I think a lot of people, particularly in the Western world, want to claim that, oh, I'm not racist, I'm not, but the fact of the matter is, we all either have that ancestral trauma and are taught to feel a certain way about a certain culture, or we're just part of a larger systemic problem that, like, maybe we're not actively choosing on a daily basis to participate in, but there are just certain things that exist in terms of how things function that are inherently racist.
And then you get fed a lot of it, you know, constantly in the things that you see and experience in the world by how other people are reacting, what you see on television, and all these biases.
It's all very fear-based, and out of that discussion came the realization that none of us can really move forward or make any progress if we're all, like, hyper concerned with saying, like, oh, I'm not this, or I'm not that, or I don't discriminate, I'm not racist. I think the way that we actually grow and learn is by admitting to ourselves first that, like, we probably have said something really insensitive or hurtful towards someone in our lives, taking responsibility for that, and then embarking on a journey of deepening our self-awareness, of healing our own wounds. And that's when I really got into looking at the ancestral trauma on the whole. I was also bullied a lot as a kid, so, like, there was that too. There was a lot to pull apart.
Bullied by whom? Just generally, or by some specific people or person?
Pretty much every kid at school. My grandparents.
You were bullied by your grandparents?
Yeah, I was constantly told I was too fat. I was a competitive synchronous swimmer training like 20 hours a week. But I was like 5'6" and like 160 pounds by like the 4th grade. So I remember asking for like a Gap sweatshirt for Christmas as a teenager, and my grandfather saying to me, no one's ever going to buy you that because it says Gap Athletics and you're too fat to be an athlete. It was all body shaming. Just never feeling like I fit in anywhere. But I think really taking responsibility for how we react in those situations, and the stories that we start to tell ourselves based on those experiences. It's not to say the trauma isn't real, that we didn't have those experiences, but I think when we start to over-identify with all of that and keep playing that story on a loop instead of reaching out and getting help, and whatever help looks like to each individual person. It might be finding a great therapist or counselor. It might be doing something sort of non-linear and energy-based. It might be journaling.
What was it for you? How did you, I mean, in addition to the conversations that you had, how did you dig deep and how did you heal yourself?
I was in like this kind of odd situation of my parents having sent me to therapy when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old already. I continued seeing different therapists, mostly talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, until my 20s. And most of the feedback I was getting from them was, even at 12 years old, you're the most self-aware person I've ever met. So because I have worked through that model and seen it really help many, many people, I'm very, very conscious of saying, like, just because it wasn't the thing for me, that doesn't take away from its efficacy or validity. And I would encourage anyone to go and find a therapist if that's what they're feeling drawn to. For me, it has definitely been energy work, especially sort of untangling things on a quantum level, which is a little out there and a little bit weird for a lot of people to wrap their heads around.
I don't think there's anything weird about it. And I think that there are probably a lot of people who want to understand more and how to find that and what it means exactly.
Yeah.
Because I hear quantum and I think Nova. And that's about all I know. Right? So.
Totally. Yeah. It's looking at our humanness from a more holistic, energy-based perspective, and looking at sort of quantum field that surrounds us, that exists on Earth, and you start seeing things or understanding things like how we're able to hook into other people's energy, read other people's energy. I've also had these experiences throughout my life where I would see or communicate with spirits as a kid. I was always a little bit nervous about sort of exploring that because it seemed like a lot of responsibility. I'm now trying to integrate that into my path as well, but I found several different energy workers and healers who practice different modalities, tried a few things out, and then I really started working intensively with someone who became my mentor. Survived her own personal trauma. Her family moved from Trinidad to the U.S., and in her 20s, she was running a marathon, became violently ill, and decided she had to withdraw from the marathon, only to find that her entire family was found dead in her home from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh my heavens.
And she had this massive spiritual awakening. She started studying more traditional forms of energy work, like Reiki, acupuncture. She felt that it was all a little too linear, like we've moved forward in time. There has to be like a faster and better way of doing this. And that's when she started looking at the quantum energy field and really accepting her gifts. And it sounds very abstract when you talk about it. Like she'll say, I'm pouring light into you and I'm pulling this out and that out. But she was also able to get very, very specific where she was like, oh my God, like I'm back in Armenia. I'm back in Germany. I have German lineage as well. I can see this happening. And then speak to me in very tangible terms about like how it was playing out in my life. And it resonated so deeply. And together we were able to clear the blockages. And it was amazing to me not only how things started to really align in my life and opportunities started to come into my lap as I felt all of this heavy sort of dead weight that I had been carrying with me, but I would also be having conversations even with friends and family members who were like, I don't believe in energy work. I think, I think it's all mumbo jumbo. It's like all a bunch of hocus pocus. These people would suddenly say things to me like, your energy field feels a lot lighter. Or like, you are such a bright light. You're really shining right now. Just using terminology that I wouldn't expect these specific people to use. So that I think has been a total game changer for me.
Thank you. I feel what you're talking about, like right now.
It's powerful.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. And I think even though it seems like things are really scary and dark in this world, two things that have helped me sort of as like constant daily reminders are one, again, not to diminish the pain or trauma any of us have experienced, because as far as I know, every human has experienced some sort of pain or trauma to differing degrees. We all have different coping mechanisms. We all have different pain thresholds. But everyone has had to overcome something. The more I connect deeply with people, the more I understand that. But if we recognize that that's how we grow and look at it as an opportunity to really step into our purpose and really shine our light, it becomes this beautiful gift that we don't fear anymore, that we don't resent. And I also try to remind myself that there are good people in this world and there are good things that are happening. And if we look at statistics, things are actually getting better. Generally speaking, most cities have gotten safer in the last little while. the media doesn't report all of the amazing things that happen every day and all of the good Samaritans who are doing incredible things out there. Mm-hmm. So I think if anybody is struggling and feeling stuck, it seems so scary, and it is such a vulnerable and sensitive thing to do, but reaching out and connecting to a human that you can trust is like paramount. Because then you can start to figure out like where to go from there, what's going to help you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it. We're going to dig into this mode of healing and invite more guests to help us with a deeper layperson's understanding of how it works and what practices we can start with as individuals. Quantum energy fields, the foundational mechanics of the universe. Stars up there shining. Get up and shine. Yep, gotta be something to it. Stay tuned. Ever thought that sharing your story might help someone else? Meet Milana Walter. Milana, tell our audience about your story your way.
Many times, hearing someone else's story gave me that jolt of hope needed at the time. Can your story help someone? At Your Story Your Way, we help you tell it as a short story, book, or script. No one knows your story better than you. So what are you waiting for? Visit yourstoryyourway.com.
You know that kind gentleman who lives next door with a beautiful family, who has been hit with misfortune after misfortune, including illnesses, a flawed legal code that left him with a raw deal, and the Great Recession? Well, his emissary is up next week, smiling and shining. You can too. Get up and shine. See you next week.
We'll return next Tuesday with more great content. Catch a preview at www.getupandShineShow.com and join the mailing list for access to great tools to help you. And remember, it's your time to get up and shine.